Hey, welcome back to Ryan's Garage. Today is going to be a great day at Ryan's Garage. Why? Is it my birthday? No. Is it Christmas? Well, kind of. Today, we are going to install this torque converter into this transmission, and then from there, we're going to take that said transmission, stick it in that car. It's going to be a fun day here at Ryan's Garage, because that just means that we're one step closer to being on the track. So what the hell are we waiting for? Let's get started. Okay, we're back. So, a little history on this transmission and torque converter. This right here is an 8-inch torque converter. It was built by Dynamic Converter down in Delaware. It has a stall speed of 5,200 RPMs. As you can see, it is tiny. It is just an 8-inch converter. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to install that into this transmission. Now, this transmission right here, hold on to your hats, everybody. It is a Chevy Power Glide transmission. A Power Glide in a Ford? Yes, that's right. We use Power Glide transmissions in drag racing for the main reason is consistency. Only one shift is being performed as you go down the track, as opposed to 2 shifts with a 3-speed. And unfortunately, Ford does not make a good 2-speed transmission. So us Ford guys have to kind of swallow our pride a little bit and put a Chevy in there. Now this transmission here, as you can see, the bell housing has been machined to fit the front of the transmission. All right, this transmission was rebuilt by ET Transmissions, Eric Reif. If you are going drag racing and you need a Power Glide transmission and you don't call Eric Reif, you need to have your head examined, because he's the man when it comes to transmissions. Thank you, Eric. All right, so as you can see, the front of the bell housing has been machined off of the regular Power Glide transmission to accept this big honking Ford type bell housing. It is SFI approved, so it's good in case, God forbid, things start flying apart in there. We also have a safety shield on this transmission. Again, this transmission, as you can see back here, this is a, oops, sorry, get the camera where you can actually see it, sorry. This is the trans brake solenoid. So when I go into the beams and push the button, this solenoid will activate first and reverse gear at the same time. When I release it, it's like dumping a clutch at 5,200 RPM. Well, this here will keep all the guts from coming through the floor and into my leg, God forbid. So we got some safety equipment on the transmission as well as on the car and on the driver. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to put that converter into that transmission, and we'll get that car, which is behind the camera, running. Stay tuned. So when you're installing a torque converter into a race car, or any car for that matter, you never, ever, ever want to put it in dry. You always want to fill it with fluid first, okay? I don't know if you can see this, but there's notches here. These engage in the front pump. So after we get it filled, we're going to put it into the transmission, into the input shaft of the transmission. And what we're listening for is 3 clicks, okay? When we get those 3 clicks, we know that we are on all the shafts and in the front pump, and we are ready to install in the car. Now, to fill this with transmission fluid is what we normally use, but in my case, transmission fluid can't hold up to the heat, so we use John Deere tractor oil. That's right. All you rednecks out there are loving this. That's right. I told you tractor oil is the best oil there is. So we fill this thing up with tractor oil. Oh, because it's an 8-inch, it doesn't hold very much. Forgot about that. We'll give that a minute to kind of gurgle down a little bit. I'll wipe up the excess because we don't want fluid flying everywhere when we start this baby up. Make sure that it's full, and we'll do our install. Give it a little shake, give it a little twisty turny. Make sure that we've got good fluid fillage. I guess that's the right word, fillage. All right, next step will be to put it in the transmission. Okay, so I filled the torque converter with transmission fluid, or tractor oil, and now we're going to install it in the transmission. I always like to just give this a little wipe to make sure there's no dirt or grease on it. Before we put it in, we don't want to put dirt in the transmission. We want to keep it out. Just make sure everything's nice and clean. And in we go. Top it off with a little bit more fluid, just a touch. Now we should be good to go. All right, so 1, 2, 3. As you put it in, you push and spin. Hopefully your trans jack doesn't roll away from you like mine is right now. But I hope this is for a Power Glide transmission. Push and spin. Come on, baby, get in there. Don't do me dirty like this. Oh, there we go, almost. You need one more. There it is. Okay. This converter is in, like Flynn. Another way you can tell is you reach down behind it and you can see there's not much of a gap between the front of the transmission and the back of the torque converter, okay? Now in this particular application, being that we're going from a Chevy to a Ford, it requires a little shim here that goes on the front of the torque converter, and then we'll go into the back of the flywheel, which I'll show you when we get under the car. Oh, she goes. A little bit of a pain in the ass getting this car in the lift because the headers hang down low and I have to jack the front end up to get the lift arms under the headers. It can get a bit of a daunting task. So this car doesn't go in the lift very often because we're almost there. So for a little background for you guys, this is my 1968 Ford Mustang. It has a 502-inch Ford motor in it. Power glide transmission, as you all know. We'll go up underneath here. 9-inch rear with 4-link suspension. And we're going to stuff the motor full of transmission today. That's the bottom of the engine. I don't know if it's exciting or not, whatever. It does have an alternator in it. This thing runs, the best it's ever gone is a 985 at 135 miles an hour. I hope to improve on that very soon. You see these headers are a pain in the butt when it comes to the lift arm. So, all right, let me get some things set up under here, some tools and whatnot, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so we go to put the transmission in the car and realize that one of the dowel pins, if you can see it here, let me put some light up there. One of the dowel pins was missing. It had just fallen out of the block. Well, that's no good. So what we had to do was come up with a new dowel pin. So what I did was I got a 1.5-inch bolt, I believe it was, or well, a 1/2 inch by 2 inches, and used the shank part of it. Sorry for my glove in the camera there. Use the shank part of it in front of the, and use the shank part of it. If I could just continue, I thought it'd be wonderful. Use the shank part of it in the dowel pin hole of the block. We glued it in. It should be fine. It's a little longer than stock, but that will help me line up the transmission. So let's get it in there. What are we waiting on? As I sit here and talk, I could have been pumping the whole time. So we're going to get this baby up in the air, get a little closer. We'll set our angle here as we're going. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the transmission is chained down on top of the jack with a safety chain, so it won't fall off, it won't go anywhere. Oh boy, we're just running out of pump, aren't we? You know what? I bought this trans jacket in Napa, and it was really a bad idea. All right, see this right here? This is what we call a puke tank, okay? When I'm waiting on the trans brake forever, and I usually do, the transmission tries to spit out all of its fluid. Well, before I put the puke tank in, I was spitting all that fluid out onto the headers and onto the track. And it stunk, and it's really not safe. You don't want to oil down the track. So went out and bought myself a puke tank and attached it to the car. Now what we'll do is we'll get this transmission, if I can get this thing to actually move more than 1/8 of a millimeter per pump, we'll get this transmission up in the car, and I'll show you how it's hooked up. Basically, it just goes from the vent that comes out of the transmission into that tank. It just catches any oil that may come out of the transmission while I'm on the converter, up on the trans brake. This here is my dipstick tube. Stick with the dipstick, Jimmy. So we got to get that heading in the right direction before we put the transmission in. So the stick itself. The tube goes through this hole here. I don't know if you can see that there. Goes through that hole there, up in along the firewall, or nowadays it's called a bulkhead, because firewall indicates that the car will catch on fire. Oh, I can't have my baby in a car that catch on fire. Let's sue everybody. All right. Yeah, this is gonna take all day today. You can see it now. All right, I'm gonna put you guys on pause here for a minute. I'm gonna get this thing up in the transmission here, or the transmission up in the car, and stick around. I'll be right back. So I made a rookie mistake. Couldn't figure out why the transmission wouldn't go in. It's really starting to bug the hell out of me. Turns out I had one bolt on the left side of the car in and snug, but I couldn't get any of the other bolts in. And as it turns out, I had the transmission bound up. It was if this is the engine, this was the transmission. I'm trying to force them together. Well, by turning it this way and bringing it together, happy things happen. And it did. It is now bolted up. I'm just tightening up the bolts. It's lined up, I should say. I'm just tightening up the bolts here. Just gonna be a happy day. Nothing really makes me happier than my engine and transmission are reunited. Which means that within 2 hours I should have this thing running. Okay. Alright, looking good. Tighten this first one back up again. Problem child here. Put these lines back on in a minute. They're going to be a little tough to do. Alright, we want these bolts tight. We do not want to lose transmission bolts as I venture down the track. That would make for a very bad day. And I might actually use a curse word. If that were to happen, I might say, oh gosh darn it, I've lost the transmission. The transmission has fallen out of my car. Gosh darn it, this is terrible. Gosh darn it. I don't think I would say gosh darn it. I think the F word might come out of my mouth again. I've been known to do that on occasion. Alright, we are just about all tightened up here. We can start fighting with the hoses. Get in there, yeah. There it is. We're going to change the ratchet here to a bigger one. Sit tight. Stop. Okay. Transmission is in. Now the next step would be to put up the transmission crossmember. That's what I have right here hanging off the car. It's really dirty. Just wipe that down. All right. Now you'll notice as I put this up, it just swings up like this. We put the big bolt right through it. Like this. Maybe like this. Come on. I figured out the transfer they like the transfer the vent open. My head closed. Silly me. Alright. Okay. You'll notice this part right here. Tilt. This thing right here. This is what we call a driveshaft safety loop. The purpose of this is NHRA mandates that this is on the car, and the reason being is because if the front driveshaft, if the front U-joint on the driveshaft were to break and the driveshaft were to come down, the car will pole vault, and that wouldn't be a good day for anybody. So the NHRA wants you to have a trans safety loop, a driveshaft safety loop. I forget what the measurement is. I think it's like 6 to 8 inches from the back of the transmission, something crazy like that. They just want to make sure that it catches the driveshaft in the event of a U-joint failure. And being that I'm Mr. Legal, we have that on this car. Next up will be the driveshaft. Let's put that bad boy in there. Driveshaft is all steel. It has heavy-duty universal joints in it. Now, one thing you want to do when you're drag racing is never, ever use a greasable universal joint. Sorry for the background noise. I'm trying to fish this driveshaft up through the chassis. Oh, sorry about that. Get the hell out of my way. All right, so you never want to have greasable universal joints, okay? The reason being is because the universal joint will literally split in half, and when the universal joint splits in half, out goes the driveshaft in your car, and that's not something you can have happen. It's like fish the shifter cable through the chassis here. Goes up like this, moves around, and comes back. We'll leave that there for now. It's out of the way. All right, let's get the driveshaft in, up in the slip yoke, nice and easy. Try that again, up in the slip yoke, nice and easy. Up in the slip yoke, nice and easy. There it goes. Okay, holy Christ. It's like a fight. All right, spin you around. We're gonna bolt the U-joint, the back of the driveshaft into the rear differential. Always a good idea, leave your transmissions in neutral when you're installing them. That way you can turn everything where it needs to be, get it all lined up, stick it back stick it in and stick it back together. Okay? Give this a tap to seat this U-joint. There we go. U-joint bolts are a cap. I don't know what the hell it's made out of, but I'm sure it's pretty strong. It holds this baby in and doesn't let it jettison off like a part that doesn't want to be in the car anymore. So we put them in. All right, we got one more. Bolts, 2 bolts on either side. It's nut and bolt actually. Nuts and bolts. It's just nuts and bolts. That's all it ever is just nuts and bolts. Put some wrenches here for this. All right. So that just about wraps up putting the transmission in. I got to hook up the shifter cable and the cooler lines. I don't necessarily know if you want to be around for that. So when we get back, I'll have the car on the ground and we'll get ready to start it. Actually, you know what? I can put the starter in too. Maybe I'll show you that. Then again, maybe I won't. Sit tight. Next up will be the cooler lines. So you can kind of see we have braided fittings here, braided line here, and it goes into solid line here. It's hard to see it there. There's not much room to see it. So I got to try to fish those together. When I'm done that, I'll hook up the gear shift linkage. I have to take these 2 transmission pan bolts out. Everything else is bolted up. The crossmember is in. The drive shaft is in. We are almost done here, folks. Almost done. That fast. It's great having a race car like that, where it all just comes apart very easily. Now this is going to drip oil all over me. I'm going to be really angry because I hate being dripped on. There's one thing I can't stand in life, and that's to be dripped on. Oh, and there it goes. All right, now let's see if we can do this. Put this back over here. Oh my God, it's leaking everywhere. It really is. We may have to do this from up inside the car. All right, let's see if we get it done. We'll get it done, not to worry. Clean up your mess always. Don't just leave it a mess. No excuse for messes. It's leaking. Tranny fluid all over me. It's gross. Ah, the line came off. Here comes the cursing. Uh-oh, can't get my hand out of it. Literally got my hand stuck in my car. How terrible is that? Let's try getting it from here, from this angle. I think I can. I think I can. Ooh, maybe. Maybe. Does it feel like it? Is it going to cooperate? Maybe. It's very important that you get these lines in and seated correctly, because there's nothing more embarrassing than going to the starting line and having them wave you off because you're leaking transmission fluid. Not that I've ever had that happen. No, not me. Professional mechanic like me? No, never. Never? Well, maybe once a season. Okay, I can't get this sucker in there. It's giving me a hard time. It really is giving me a fight. That's all right though. I will win. I must win. What did Rocky's wife say? All I want you to do is win, Rocky. Losing my mind as I do this. Absolutely mentally checking out. Okay, that worked well. No, it didn't. All right, hang tight for a minute. Let me get this going. That way I can curse off camera. So I got it. Took a little bit of a fight, but they're in there. Now hopefully, God willing, they won't leak. That's the key. You don't want any leaks. This thing has to be dry as can be up on the starting line. Nothing more embarrassing than they put the mop head in front of your windshield to tell you that you're leaking. And then you get the tow off from the big green tow truck. Nothing worse. Nothing more embarrassing. Well, I guess the only thing other than that would be more embarrassing would be locked in a stall, I guess, and you can't get out. And they're calling you to the lanes and you can't get out of the stall. I guess that would be embarrassing. If we're thinking about embarrassments. All right, next up is the transmission shifter cable. So to get that on, we have to take 2 transmission bolts out of the pan. This one and this one. Okay. The bracket for the shifter, for said shifter, is held in like this. can see that. It's held in like that. 2 bolts up in the pan. One, 2. All right. Now, you have to put this little lever. Let me zoom in for you. Now, I just banged my head on the lift. This little lever here goes inside the linkage there, like that. But it has to be perfect. It cannot be bound up at all. I think we'll be okay there, I think. It has a little clip that holds it in place. Let's check that. I think we'll be okay there. Just give that a little adjustment so it's not twisted. I had a problem back in the day with this thing where it wouldn't shift and it wouldn't go into second gear, and it turns out that the shifter was out of adjustment. Shifter adjustment is critical on this car. It's got to be right. If it ain't right, you ain't gonna win. It's that simple. Your day will end early. That's better. I like that better. Let's put a little handy dandy clip in there. See that? Little clip. That's going to go up in here, like so. It's going to get my big fat nose pickers in there. There it is. Beautiful. Snug down that adjustment nut that I loosened. You can see I'm total professional here using the adjustable wrench, the adjustable style wrench. Wait, you know what? I think I actually have a wrench here that'll fit that. Let me see. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Oh, she's a beaut. All right, there we go. Tight. Now, next up is the puke tank hose. Where did it go? Puke tank hose, where are you? Oh, here it is. Okay, hang on. Get my hands on that sucker. It's right here. Okay. Let me wheel you over. Hang on, we're gonna go in for a ride now. Puke tank is right there. Okay. The fitting is right here. And all we got to do, I hope you can see this. I'm not sure where the camera is. There we go. So I get myself dizzy spinning around. All we got to do is take the puke tank hose, put it into the puke tank fitting, and push it in. And that's it. It's in there. Okay, that's installed. She's coming together well now. Let's get that in a little bit more. I guess that's it. Okay. Next up is the starter and the torque converter nuts. Torque converter nuts here, you can see the bolts go through here. That's the torque converter spinning freely. I made sure that it was up into the back of the crankshaft, right there. I made sure it's up in there flush like it's supposed to be, and it is. So what we'll start to do next is we'll get the tools we need to rotate this engine around and install the torque converter. All right, be right back. Okay, so we're going to put the torque converter bolts and nuts in. Now, one thing that's unique about this deal here is we just have a regular old grade 8 bolt, but we have what's called a nylock. I don't know if you can see that right there. You see that little white piece inside the bolt, inside the threads there? That's actually nylon. And what it does is when the bolt goes in and it cuts through that nylon, the threads cut through that nylon, it's like having glue on the nut, and it won't allow it to back out. Now with this particular car, with all race cars for that matter, they shake a lot. They are not a smooth idling car. It's not your daddy's Cadillac. All right, so they make a lot of noise, they shake a lot. Things have a tendency to fall off of race cars, unfortunately. And you don't want to be the guy that had something fall off your race car. It's kind of embarrassing when it happens. So you want to get these things as tight as you possibly can, right? And when you get to a certain point, you stop turning the nylock. You hold that still, and you run the nut into the bolt rather in tight, like that. Okay. Now we rotate the engine around until the next one. Until the next torque converter bolt is in sight. God, this compression, it's hard to turn this thing. Okay, that should be good. These nylocks should be replaced after every use, so they are a one and done type of deal. And they're not that expensive. You can get nuts and bolts at Tractor Supply. You buy it by the pound, which is kind of interesting. It's like the old days in the grocery store, you know, with the green grocer. Except instead of the green grocer, you have the green nutter. Oh, you have hardware, and you weigh it. So you throw it in a bag and you put down the code and you take it up to the counter. And the nice lady behind the counter weighs it for you to make sure you're not stealing. So nice of her to do that. And then once that's done, you're good to go. All right. One more bolt and nut in this torque converter, and she's bolted up. Oh. I like to go flat washer on one side, lock washer on the other. That's the way I like to put in hardware. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I've never been certified in bolt and nuttery. I don't know if there is such a thing. But nevertheless, we'll tighten these up. Get these things tight. Nothing flies apart on this car. Keep your fingers crossed. All right, next up is the starter. Stay right there. I'll go get it. Okay, next up is the starter. Ow, whacked my head again, son of a bitch. This is the starter for this car. It's a high torque starter. All right, works real good, but there's not much room to put it in. All right, it gets a little bit tight as far as clearances. Let me show you where it goes. Right there, all right? Now the tough part is this top bolt is literally a hex bolt. I use this because it won't fit in the slot for the starter. So we'll try to install that without cursing much. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing, of course. It's gonna be lovely. It's gonna go in smooth, like it's gonna be beautiful. All right, so that goes up in like this. Easier way to do this is to start the bottom bolt first, so I know I have it lined up properly. Having washer difficulties here. Okay, in it goes. We'll snug that down. Now here comes the tricky part. Okay, I have to get my hex socket on said hex bolt and have it line up with the bolt hole somewhere in here. Let's see it. Get my trusty flashlight out here. Oh yeah, there it is. Just get that in there like this. It can be quite a task sometimes putting these cars together. You just don't have a lot of space. You gotta make the most of the space you got. So it's not a Jackson 5 song. So you gotta really cram stuff in sometimes. And it can make it a bit difficult. Oh! I got it. First try. Professional. What can I say? I would zip it in. Oh. Something like that. Get back to me. Ooh. Okay. All right. It's all good. Not to worry. Nothing is cracked yet. Just tighten this bolt up and make sure it's good. Oh yeah, it is. Yep. Okay, now give me back my socket, please. Hello. Hello, Mustang socket. Turn it back, please. It's kind of, you know. Oh, it didn't get back. Now I gotta go up after it. There it is. All right. Thank you. All right. Next, we gotta get the lower bolt in, and then we are wiring it up. We are just about ready to send this baby back. We'll paint it black and hit the track. That's right side. Sit tight. Don't go nowhere. Don't leave. Don't tune out. Don't go nowhere. Oh, here I am. I'm back. All right. Let's get this. That's in. It has one wire to it. Oh, crap. Oh, I forgot to put the ground wire on. What an idiot I am. God, I suck. No problem. Like I said, things are tight. Not a lot of room for error. You gotta make sure that it's in correctly. You don't want things flying apart in these cars. You don't want things coming off. You don't want, especially hardware where, you know, one of your fellow racers could run it over and cause problems in their car. That would not be a good day for everybody involved. Tighten off. That's not getting tight enough. There it goes. Okay. Put that. I like to put a separate ground on these things. You don't really have to, but the way I see it is there's so many different type of metals. There's aluminum bolting to steel. There's steel bolting to aluminum. There's plastic somewhere in there somewhere. So it's a good idea to ground the starter with its own separate bolt. Oh, yeah, own separate wire. Okay, next up is the trans temperature gauge and the trans brake. All right, roll you back here. Okay. Oh wait, sorry, no, let me roll you forward. Get this other wire. Roll you forward. Because we got to put this wire onto said transmission. I think this goes over top or the other way. Get something over. This car's been apart for quite a while, all winter long actually. I was very, you know, thinking I'm going to get this thing fixed in a day. Yeah, then life came about. That was the end of that. All right, so please bring you back around here. Sorry for the bumpy ride, as always. You can see I have a little sending unit right there. This is for transmission temperature. It's a good idea to know where your transmission temperature is for a couple different reasons. For one, you don't want to overheat the transmission, and two, you want to make sure the transmission is warmed up properly. That makes a difference when you're racing. If the transmission is cold, it won't run the same. It might be a little slower. And until it's warmed up, you want to make sure that all the fluids, both engine oil, you know, the cooling system itself, and the transmission and differential are both warmed up when you're racing. You don't want to just go out there cold. You could break stuff for one, which would not make for a good day. And also, for consistency reasons, you want to make sure that it's warmed up. You don't want to just be out there willy-nilly, just, you know, driving down the track. You want to make sure that you're going to at least pretend like you know what you're doing, even if you don't. I've been getting away with that for quite a while. Okay, transmission sending unit is wired. I think the final step now will be the trans brake, which I will do. I have to actually repair the wire before I install it. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I believe we're ready to start this car. And I'll show you that in a minute. So sit tight. Okay, so the transmission is in. We're getting ready to start this baby up and make some noise. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to crank the engine around, get oil pressure. After oil pressure is achieved, we'll see if we can't get it started. Okay, we got oil pressure. Let's fill the carburetors up with fuel. Let's make some noise.